All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us. We are here at the Society of Fat Mermaids panel. Very excited to have these amazing panelists from all over the country to chat with us today. And this panel is being led by wonderful Chè Monique of Society of Fat Mermaids. So thank you, Shea, for putting this all together for us. And I'm going to hand it over to Chè. We're going to start.
Hello. I am Mermaid Chè Monique. I am the founder of the Society of Fat Mermaids. We are both a clothing line and a community of fat, plus size, curvy, juicy mermaids. I'm super jazzed to have this panel. I'm really excited to get to know everyone here better. I am based in the DC area. I swim with Metro Merfolk. I can be found at mermaidchemonique.com, Insta, Facebook, whatever. I also started #Merfolk for Black Lives, but you all probably already know that, which is awesome. So thank you for already knowing that. I would love for everyone just to introduce themselves to start, and maybe what made you decide to agree to participate in this panel. I think we have an awesome kind of cross-section of like different backgrounds of professional Myrrh performers. I know on Zoom everybody has a different view, and I currently see Lexi, so or the Valkyrie Mermaid. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Lexi Stack. I'm also known as the Valkyrie Mermaid. The representation panel last year was one that I participated in as a representative for the Society of Fat Mermaids and plus size mermaids as well. And so being asked to come again and participate in yet another panel was something very excited for me, because it's something I'm extremely passionate about. I've done all varieties of curvy modeling, running from runway to underwater to clothing, you name it. And so being here for the representation for plus size fat curvy mermaids is something that I'd love to be able to answer some of your guys' questions.
Hey guys, there we are. Mermaid Mallory here. How you guys all doing? I was excited to join this panel because not only am I a member of the plus size community, but I'm also a merman, and within that, I'm one of the few professional plus size mermen out there. So I really thought that I could bring a lot to the table to talk about with that, and what it's like in the industry, and just also what it's like for us to be the representation of a lot of the plus size mermaids out there and our experiences with that so far. So I was really excited to come on. I've been mermaiding for professionally about 2 years now. So I wanted to come in and share my experience on that.
Hi everyone, can you guys hear me? My name is Rose, also known as Mermaid Lanai, the New York Mermaid. I have been a professional mermaid for 10 long years, working with children, parties, events, and I've been published and everything, but I'm also a curvy mermaid. That's okay with me. I chose to be a part of this panel because I know there are a lot of professionals and semi-professionals and other mermaids and mermen and merfolk in general who are, beautiful, unique, and deserve to be, just inspired and find your own way. It doesn't matter if you're a little bit curvy or have a little extra treasure in your chest, but you know what? You're all beautiful, and I want to share my experiences as well. And thank you guys for having me, of course.
Hi, my name is Justine. I'm the Mermaid Seamstress. I am a mermaid YouTuber and influencer. I have been mermaiding now for 10 years and just started my online presence about 2.5 years ago. And since then, I have been receiving a lot of information from people saying how much they needed to see a plus size mermaid represented in this community and how grateful they were for that. And so I connected with Shea about a year ago for the very first time, and obviously fell in love with the fact that there was a Society of Fat Mermaids out there. And when she asked me to be part of this panel, I agreed, because I agree that there needs to be more representation of curvy mermaids and plus size mermaids, whatever you want to call yourselves, fat mermaids out there.
So I kind of crowdsourced the questions we'll be asking, or I'll be asking. And someone who's very important to the Society of Fat Mermaids, Grace, or Pegasus Springs Muses, really this panel was her idea. Because of COVID, everybody's doing everything online, which has been like awesome, because honestly, in some ways I'm doing more things than I would be able to otherwise. Like, I don't think this panel would be happening in person this year, for example. And so it's pretty cool. And so it was something that was kind of like on my to-do list. And then when I heard that the con was going virtual, I was like, this would be the perfect place for this panel. And the first thing Grace really said she wanted to hear folks talk about, and I guess this means we'll be starting low and working our way back up high, is, do you face any bullying or harassment because of your size? And if you do, how do you deal with that? And how do you continue to post stuff online or go out to gigs knowing that you may face that?
Okay, so this is definitely something that I feel like comes up less often. Actually, for me, it came up less often when I didn't have an online presence. And I think that's because the internet, that anonymity that comes with the internet makes saying horrible things easier for people, because they can hide behind their screen. When I was growing up, I was definitely a target of bullying because of my size. And I never really heard those negative comments, but there was an undertone, especially with my parents, saying that, you can't mermaid in public, you can't draw more attention to yourself, because that'll put a bigger target on your back. And I've actually found the opposite, that mermaiding kind of opens up other avenues for me. But in terms of how I deal with it, when I do get pretty bad comments, like one of the ways that I deal with it on my platforms is that I ignore it. I shut it down. If it's something that I can't block, delete, or move on, somehow remove from my channel, I will address it immediately and saying, this is inappropriate, please stop. For me, I started online at a point where I have a very thick skin for these things, but some comments definitely do still hurt me. And I know it hurts me most to think that they hurt those people who reach out and say, I'm just new, you gave me confidence, and with such possibly fragile confidence that they have, I'm more worried that it hurts the people who see those comments on my channel. And so I hope by the ones that they do see me address, that gives them inspiration to say, she's able to let those roll off. But sometimes it does mean that I need to take a break and recuperate before I respond, because I don't want to be responding out of anger and continue and maybe put them on the defensive or make it worse.
Just piggybacking off of that, I wanted to say, it's very true, because when I first started doing this, I actually started with an online presence first, before I started actually getting out there and being around people. And so I had the opposite effect of where I was getting all the stuff online right away and being like, oh, do I really want to do this? Is this something that I have the personal backbone for? And I had to tell myself, yes, because you've endured this your entire life. I mean, just being plus size in general, even outside of mermaiding in the real world can be difficult at times. And growing up, especially since I started dancing, because most of people know my background, I am a dancer, and dancers are not known or supposed to be, curvy. They're supposed to be paper thin, things fit into one costume fits everybody that's in that show, and all that stuff. And so I already had to deal with that with my dance background. So I was like, you've dealt with this, why not just continue to go for it? What have you got to lose? And similar to what she said earlier, is I kind of just ignored it. All the stuff I was getting at the beginning, I just decided to ignore it and just do me. And once I started doing me, that was enough.
So I feel like within this community, I've felt nothing but positivity from the community itself when it comes to my size. I believe it's more of the outside perspective on what people envision as a mermaid. Because for the longest time, when I started in 2014, I wasn't getting gigs because I was plus size. And so I had to do most of the free events, and I fell into the Renaissance circuit because that's from my childhood. But plus size is a lot more accepted in the Renaissance fair circuit, I noticed. And so I worked really hard to try and bring a plus size aspect into the mermaid community in multiple ways, whether it be photo shoots, attending the mermaid weekend. Not a lot of people are comfortable seeing a plus size Myrrh, whether it be male, female, any gender orientation as well. So I feel like the most backlash I've had personally was in person and people sexualizing and being total merverts. But other than that, I feel like the online presence has been a lot kinder to me.
Okay, so basically I started in 2010, and because I have a hypothyroid issue, it's when I started gaining weight, and in 2015 is when I gained my I do get people in certain gigs that look at me and go, well, you're kind of big for a mermaid, and I just kind of like, it's gonna happen, you know, I'm used to it already, and I'll just tell them, you know what, mermaids and mermen come in all shapes and colors, and it's basically something, you know, and kids love me because I've had an event that I went to, and I've worked with a lot of kids. I had one unfortunately call me a marine mammal, a whale, and I didn't care, and I looked at the little kids, and there were kids running around. There was one that looked at me, and she was like, I'm gonna stay with you because you're a real mermaid. And I love when kids are just like, they're more inspiring, and I mean, more genuine, I guess you can say, than some adults. In the mermaid community, however, I've never really had too much problems with a lot of people telling me, oh, you're too blessed to be a professional mermaid, and this and that. But I mean, there's one or two, but nothing too big. Mostly it's with outside people that look at me and go, she's a professional, and I'm like, yes, I'm a professional, and I have been. It's not about the look, it's about how you do you and how you become yourself and as a professional mermaid. So
I'm going to answer this question as well. I think due to just like, I've been fat my whole life. Like my father was calling me bruiser when I was 2. And so for me, as someone who's like never quite fit in the box, at some point I guess my coping mechanism or whatever is I just started building my own boxes, building my own tables, setting my own plate, you know, and so I am not one, which is to say that by the time I entered mermaiding, I mostly put myself in places where I knew I would be welcome, if that makes sense. And yeah, people tease me online occasionally, and for the most part, I just ignore and delete. I don't usually give it any airtime, and I try to remind myself that it's kind of like self-talk in general. Like you'll get like 100 really, really awesome comments, and then one person will call you something horrible, and we'll get stuck on that. But I just try to remind myself, I try to just like ignore that one person and go like 99 people just said you were amazing. Don't listen to the voice of the one. And I try to just, I find like Justine said earlier, like if you start like an argument online or, you know, there's no point, I feel like, in engaging in that level of ignorance. But I have been fortunate because I started Society of Fat Mermaids. Like I've been so lucky, and I was nervous that people were gonna like constantly troll our Instagram page, and we have had none of it. But for the most part, because I've created these positive, affirming spaces for fat people and Black people and queer people and just people who don't necessarily fit the like standard mold, for the most part, the people who gravitate to me and what I'm doing are people who really want to see me and what I'm doing. And I've been very fortunate in that. I see a lot of questions coming in. We're going to roll through the questions that we have set, and then we'll definitely take questions from the chat at the end. And so, yes, so now since we like talked about bullying, someone also asked, what are your best Myrrh memories so far?
would say for my best Myrrh memories, it really depends. When it comes to kids, my favorite is working with handicapped children. I was one of the few ones in my old pod who would really give that special attention to children that are handicapped in any way, shape, or form, to the point where I had a little girl come up to me who was completely blind, and her mother requested that she could touch my tail. And the little girl and her mom started crying because she was like, it's real, the mermaid's real. And I was like, see, even though you can't see, doesn't mean you can't swim, doesn't mean you can't be a mermaid yourself, and it doesn't mean the magic is gone. And so I worked really hard to bring that magic here to everyone. And that's why with my Renaissance fairs that I work, I usually only do silicone tails for that specific reason, because I have people that tactically want to see something or feel something that they would have never had that opportunity anytime in their life normally. And so seeing them laugh, seeing them cry, I see people walk past me and get excited just because, oh my gosh, there's a mermaid. And I've even had women come past me and go, thank you. I have never seen a plus size mermaid ever out here. And the fact that you're out here, you're rocking it, you don't care. I was like, I'm happy and I want to make everybody else around me happy. So that's what truly matters. And I feel like that's one of the most memorable times.
Okay. It's crazy. It's hard to pinpoint it into a best memory, because I think anytime I get to be a merman is a best memory, honestly. The fact that I get to live out this fantasy that I've had my entire life on a regular basis, I still pinch myself with all the stuff that's been happening lately and coming along. And I think one of the things I love the most is all the people that I get to meet, all of the like-minded people out there, like all of you guys here on this panel and watching, and that engage with me on my social media presence and everything. It's truly been amazing just to talk to so many different people who share this affinity with this fantasy and culture that we have here. If I had to pinpoint it though to probably like a specific time or example, I'd say it would be one day where I was on the beach taking pictures. And this wasn't like me doing anything like super professional. It was literally like I had some friends that I was away on a contract doing a show, and they were like, oh, and they all found out I was a mermaid, or merman in the show, and they were like, oh, did you bring your tail? So they're like, can we try on your tail? And I was like, sure. And it happened to be one of my fabric tails, so I was like, yeah, that's fine, you can try that on. So we took it to the beach, and like I was taking pictures of them in my tails, and so that they could have pictures of them as mermaids. And just seeing them be able to live out their fantasy for a hot second with that on the beach was pretty cool. But afterwards, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm here. Let me get a couple of pictures. So I sat down, put my tail on, and I'm sitting there posing. And this guy walks up to me, and he's like, excuse me, do you mind if my kids take a picture with you? And I was like, sure. And I turned around, and where we were, I was probably the only person of color in, who knows, probably a 50-mile radius. But I turned around, and there was this fair-skinned guy, but he had these two little black girls with him, and they were staring at me like this. And it took everything in my power to keep my composure, because I was feeling like so many emotions at once of like what it must have been like for them to see a mermaid on the beach, but then to see a merman of color on the beach, and just that representation for them, that. And it didn't matter that, I was plus size or anything like that. It's just the magic for them in that moment. And they were just so in awe, and they could not stop smiling, and they were just so happy. And afterwards we talked, and I just talked to them for a little bit and asked them how they were doing. And, I immediately was in character, because before I was just taking pictures for fun. And, as they were leaving, he was like, thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. I was like, honestly, it was my pleasure. And that left me feeling like, this is why I do that. Even this moment, I was doing it for fun, not even on the clock or anything. I was just out here with my friends taking pictures, and I had that moment and experience in that time. So I'd say that would be probably one of my favorite memories.
I was trying to recall, and then one of them just hit me. And so my favorite memory is definitely, I had, was more as the mermaid seamstress and less as a mermaid. But so as a tail maker, when I started mermaiding, I was kind of like, I only made tails for myself. And then I had a friend who did not like the water. I could not get him in the water at all, ever. And the first time that I revealed to him that I was a mermaid, that I brought over some tails, and he was like looking really intently, like he wanted to get in the water with me. And I was like, come on, just do it. And he's like, maybe next time. And I ended up for his birthday making him a tail. And first of all, he got in the water. He got in the water right away and has been swimming ever since. But also, he at the time was struggling a lot. He's a trans man and was struggling a lot during his transition. And giving him the opportunity to be in a tail was something that he said made all of that wash away, because it was no longer about, do I wear trunks? Do I wear a one piece? Do I have to, being able to do the mermaid look, the merman look, was erased that gender dysphoria for him. And so that was something that was really gratifying to me, to be able to give that passion, to give my passion to somebody else, and for them to feel empowered by it, like I feel empowered when I mermaid.
Oh my gosh, I have so many memories. I can tell you funny ones and I can tell you emotional ones, but I think I'm going to tell you the emotional ones, because this one has hit me hard, and even now I'm starting to cry thinking about it. There was a little girl that I met. Her name was Hannah, and she couldn't talk. She was in and out of the hospital for years, like 3 years. And the first time she was officially out of the hospital, they did her 3rd birthday, and they contacted me. And this was a dry event, and Hannah doesn't talk, but I went in there. I dressed up as my mermaid self. I did this by myself because my husband had to work, and I'm sitting there, and the mom is ready, and she's excited, and she's like, all right, we're gonna get Hannah. So Hannah went to a nap. She woke up, and she was just like looking in, and she's just like, there's a mermaid in my backyard. And it was the cutest thing. And she didn't like talk or anything, but the reaction that she had is just like, oh my God. And she came running towards me and gave me a hug, and I read her a story, and her mom sang her happy birthday. And I always remember these stories. It's just, now I'm a good friend of the mother, and I truly love that I can just, even now, she's like 7 or 8 years old now, and I see her all the time, and she's just like, and she's like trying to like learn how to, she has like a speech, starting to learn, she's a speech person, I'm sorry. And every child that I've met, there are always like emotional and fun moments, happy moments. And like, I worked at a hospital with children, and there was one kid that he came over, and all he wanted to do was just hug me. And that's all you gotta, some kids just need that, and oh my God, just thinking about it, I love my job. I would never trade it for the world. And I can tell you some funny stories, but I rather not. But yeah, I mean, those are my favorite memories, working with children, working with people, and just like, I've had people come up to me and go, you are amazing. And I'm like, I'm just me. It doesn't matter. I'm just me, and yeah, I really do love, like, I love my job. This is my favorite memories. All of them are my favorite memories. I can't just pick one.
I can totally relate. I've been sitting here going back and forth, like, which story should I share? And I'm gonna like just take it to the extreme other side. First of all, like, if you follow me, I'm kind of a sexy Myrrh. I have a background in burlesque. I occasionally interact with children, and those are really memorable moments for me because they're like rare. And so basically anytime I've had an interaction with a child has absolutely stood out, because it's like not often that I'm around children in my tail, except for children I know personally. But like, to give us just a different flavor, because I don't know who's watching, and I feel like we need to like represent a whole bunch of different things. I have this really awesome memory very early into my mermaiding career. I went on this like awesome professional development weekend to Florida. And it just was like the mermaid version of Hangover. Like, I live in the DC area, and myself and 2 Myrrh friends like flew into Fort Lauderdale, and like we immediately had a photo shoot, and we went to go do like training with someone. And I was very serious about doing this training. So basically, I took a class at Mermagicon. The instructor was amazing. And I was like, I've got to like figure out how to go to Florida like regularly to train with you. And I told a friend that I was going, and they're like, I'm coming. And then another friend's like, I'm coming. And all of a sudden we're on like this like girls trip, and they just like want to go hang out, like hashtag girls just want to have fun. They were also Myrrhs, but I'm very serious. Like I'm trying to develop my skills as a Myrrh. And so we fly in and we're doing photo shoots immediately. Oh, and my favorite photographer also just knew I was going, and she was like, well, if you're going to Florida and your friends will pay me to shoot them, I'll fly in and I'll go too. So just like this amazing little like, boom, everybody wants to go. So we all fly in from the DC area, go to Florida. Like before we even get to our Airbnb, we're on the beach doing photo shoots. And then my friends are like, so-and-so, another Myrrh, is staying at the Versace mansion. We should go party at the Versace mansion tonight. When I tell you that I was like, we cannot go party at the Versace mansion. We have swim training at 8 a.m. and we need to be ready and we cannot be hungover. This is very important. I don't want to party. I did not come here to party. I came here to train. And my friend's like, we're going to the Versace mansion. And so of course we go to the Versace mansion, and next thing you know, you're like doing photos in the pool. And I have to go back because the pool in the Versace mansion, it's marbled tile, and the like tiles are like the same color as my tail. But we weren't allowed to get in to the pool until there's a restaurant there, until after the restaurant closed. So we couldn't get into the pool until like 1 a.m. And so I don't have awesome pictures of my tail in the pool, but one day I'll go back and we will see this. But anyways, so the whole weekend we ended up back there. Like the next night we had our training. The training was awesome, but it was just this like completely like magical, ridiculous, like not at all what I planned, but just total like hangover, like the movie kind of version of like just all these different mermaids happening to be around, and like folks just happen to be in Florida like all at the same time. So for those of you who are not like into the warm and fuzzies with the little people, which I actually am, that is an awesome memory that I had. And it was particularly awesome because it was so early in my Myrrh career, you know, that like it was just really cool. So I'm gonna throw this first question to Justine, or this next question to Justine first. But I definitely want to hear what everybody has to say about it. How can tail makers better serve fat and plus size Myrrhs?
Wow. I like so many things come to mind. This is something I've been thinking about a lot, and I know that you and I have collaborated on doing a inventory of sizes and how tails fit certain, what I would say, street sizes, so non-specific tail maker sizes, over on the Society of Fat Mermaids. And so tail makers, generally what the problems that I've seen with tails is that either the size chart is incomplete, therefore they don't give the same kind of range of measurements as they could. They lend to be more on the conservative side, even though their tails might stretch another 4 to 5 inches. So for example, Myrrh tailor tails, I would be listed, if I went by my measurements, I would fit an extra large, when in reality, I wear a medium because of how much their tails stretch and how much how tight I prefer my tails. So I think, getting that more accurate range, even if that's saying like, having a preferred range and then having an extended range listed on their site. Another thing would be recognizing that just because you're enlarging the size doesn't mean you have to enlarge it uniformly. So I've often found tails where they basically have just scaled up all of the measurements: hips, knees, ankles, waist. And instead, and what that does is it makes it too big in other areas. It limits the amount of bodies that tail can fit. And so another way of doing that would be to, for example, take a survey of what people's body measurements are actually. And I think that, not just tail makers, I think that all this has this resonates with a lot of clothing options, and look at what parts of the body, at what scale do parts of the body increase in size. So, you might have people generally gain less fat at their calves and their ankles rather than their hips and their waist. And some people, gain more at their hips than at their waist. And so looking at, okay, if we need to enlarge our tail size at the waist and hips by a full measurement, maybe we only enlarge the calves and the ankles by a quarter of that or half of that, because otherwise you run into the issue of tails that are, fit super well in one area and not in others. And stretch fabric is actually, Finfolk is now releasing their line of with stretchier material, their new line of fabric tails with stretchier material. And something like that actually has a really large benefit to not just to plus size people, but also with people who have run into the challenge of, well, I have a very small waist, but I have a very large hips, or I have very large hips, but I have very small calves and ankles, or I have very large calves and ankles, but I have a very small waist. Whatever that might be, adding that versatility is what is going to is the first step, I think, to making them more inclusive. And then after that, actually considering larger sizes. So something larger than just an XXL or a large or an extra large.
Awesome. I just put in the link to our sizing survey that thankfully really Justine put it together. I've been talking about doing this survey for probably a year, and one day Justine was just like, okay, here it is. And so I just posted that link. So what we're asking people to do is, if you have a fabric tail, and we want all people of all different sizes and body types, if you have a fabric tail, fill out the survey. And there's kind of like the quick version and the long version. So I am not a person who, I may have a measuring tape somewhere, but I'm not a person who frequently measures myself. So I'm more of a like, okay, I wear a size 3X usually, about a 22, 24, and in Magic Tail I wear an XL, but it's a little snug, and in Fin Fun I also wear an XL, or actually I wear a large that's a little snug, but would probably fit an XL. And so we're trying to pull all that information together so we have like a strong data set, so that when people ask the question, which is like, where can I find a plus size mermaid tail? And that's the accessibility issue, is that one of many, is that like a lot of these tail makers, the sizing on the charts end at like XL. As a person who wears a 3X, if someone wasn't my friend and said, hey, just put this on, I actually think you fit a large, I would never even waste my time looking at a smaller like size than what I usually wear. And so we're asking folks to fill that chart out, so we have kind of like more than just anecdotally, we can kind of say with data, actually, this street size usually goes to this tail size. And then for people who are more thorough, such as Justine, and people who are like comfortable with their measuring tape, you can go in and give those extra measurements, like this is my waist and this is my hips and these are my calves. And so then we can use that information for tail makers. It's been awesome. The survey, I just pulled it up to put the link in. And there's 161 responses. I think when we did this, I was like hoping like we'd get 50. And I know that some of those responses are people who have 6 tails and did it for all 6 of their tails, but nonetheless, it's still really useful information for folks to have. And so please, regardless of what size you wear, if you own a fabric tail, please fill out that survey. And it may be a little while before I pull this data set. COVID has definitely shaken my life up a bit, but it is something that we are working on. Does anybody else have anything to say about how tail makers could better serve us?
Having been in the industry for so long, I've seen a lot of the tail makers come into play. I've seen some of the tail makers go from certain quality to different quality excessively. I saw how much the fabric tails have come into boom back before they were kind of a huge thing, and now all the custom printed tails and everything that everyone's coming out with. Okay, something everybody will recognize. You know that tail gap in the back when you swim? It's always there. It's one of those things that I feel like being plus size, having a small waist with larger hips, it's one of those, yeah, silicone stretches to a certain extent, but I need to stretch it over the hips and still allow it to suction right back on the waist, because or else you're going to have that constant gap. And the only thing I found to help that was like one of the gap wraps from Myrrh Nation, because my Myrrh tailor came in way too big. It was pretty off in the sizing, but I know that comes with handmade items, and I still have that tail to this day and love it to death. So it's one of those learning how to accessorize to work with it, or knowing to talk to your designer rather than bashing your designers. Go talk to them, email them, talk about it, see what they can do for you. And if they can't do it, you can take it to somebody like Crocaw FX or La Sirena Tails, whichever one you know them from. You can see if they can take it in, because sometimes Myrrh tailor will take a longer wait. But with tails, you also have tops. How many plus size mermaids in this community have a time and a half trying to find a top? Right? A good top that's comfortable, that you're not going to fall out of unless you want to, that you can use, that's adaptable for adult events or children's events, any of that, let alone one that's at a good price. We're all used to spending $50 plus at Torrid or at Lane Bryant or something for a good solid bra. We expect to spend that on our nice mermaid tops, because those will last even more. But something people don't realize about silicone is silicone shrinks when you pour it and cast it. So some of your tops are coming in your bra size that you're wearing right now, but because of the silicone, it's causing it to shrink. So you needed it in one size larger. And that happens with tails too. And the other thing with silicone tails, not everybody knows how to roll them up properly. So it could be exactly perfectly your size, but if you don't know how to put your tail on properly or use proper lubrications or anything, you might not have actually gotten your tail fully on. But honestly, I've seen people mess up tails too. They come in totally the wrong size. I've seen people change weight drastically themselves and be upset that they can't fit into their new tails. So I feel like that's why our community is so important, because I've seen people gain weight and swap tails with somebody else who just lost a bunch of weight. And so we help each other, we encourage each other. If I have a tear on my tail, I can message Rachel and go, what do I do? And we can just all talk within our community. It's one of those great things. Just ask questions. If you see a tail you love, message that person and say, hey, what process did you go through in order to get that tail, and did it come how you expected it? Did you have to take it to a seamstress afterwards to have it taken in even more? And when it comes to your measurements, if you're measuring yourself, you're not always measuring correctly. If you have somebody else measure you, it's closer, but it's not always exact. And it's not like you have the actual tailor going there and measuring you for your tail perfectly. The closest person I know for that is Myrrh Nation, because it's literally the duct tape dummy of your exact size.
And if you wouldn't mind me just jumping in just for a quick sec, I did post in the comments, but and one of that like issues is how we fit tails. So having the two pieces, especially in a silicone tail, will allow for that gapping, as opposed to having a dart or another design feature in the back that actually comes down to patterning, which will take it in around those curves as opposed to just the side curves. So that's another way in which, you know, consideration for curvier people can be made.
I love listening to you talk about how things are made. I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like you just enjoy listening to someone talk about their area of expertise, and you're like learning, and not like, it's not knowledge I ever intend to apply, but it's just really awesome to hear like, oh, that does make sense. Does anybody else have any thoughts on how tail makers could better serve us? I'm gonna just say, I think that it was Valkyrie Mermaid who said, talk to your tail maker, don't bash your tail maker. What's hard in this industry is there's maybe like 5 Myrrhs that aren't like tiny businesses. And I like, other than like Hannah Fraser and I think I was like listening to an interview of Lyndon, and she lives in like an 800 square foot apartment, so she can live on the beach. Like there's especially when you're new to mermaiding, you see like all these glamorous pictures and all these like fancy folks, and like our industry is tiny. And so even the people at the quote unquote top, chances are a really small business, like just trying to figure it out. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't push for people to better serve us. And because they are small businesses, there's an opportunity to like kind of have just one-on-one type conversations, because small businesses do want to serve their customers. But I think sometimes there's a tendency, and I guess I just say this as a small business owner who messes a whole bunch of stuff up and is grateful. I messed up Lexi's shirt order for tonight. And it's just grateful that people have given me grace. I just want to remind folks that there's not a Myrrh I'm aware of who's like really some like Fortune 500 company. If they are, like, tell me who they are so I can fangirl. And then the next question that someone asked, it's also on tails. And I'm definitely going to shoot it back to you, Justine. And again, if anybody else has anything to add, I'd love to hear it. Is there anything one should really take into consideration before making their own plus size tail?
I would say, as somebody who started making their own tails and really didn't realize that there were plus size available tails until 2 years ago or so, definitely starting with what in the costuming world or in the seamstress world would be called a mock-up. So using very cheap fabric, go to Joann's, use those discount codes, buy the cheapest material you can find that is swimsuit material, just that basic solid stuff, and put it to the test. Test how you made your pattern, test how you want to sew it, test your stitches, test all of that stuff before you invest money into those bigger, more expensive fabrics, like spacer, like neoprene even, and just learn how to adjust. Do your research, learn how your fabric is going to stretch, learn how you can best tailor that pattern to yourself. Stiffer fabrics and silicones are going to cause that tail gapping. And just being open to mistakes. My first tail was not perfect, but did I learn from it? Heck yes. And my next tail fit better, looked better, performed better in the water. So just being prepared to make those mistakes. Order test samples of the fabric that you're going to get. Most fabric suppliers will have that so that you can test like wear and tear. You don't want to put all of this energy into a great tail that is not water resistant. And just, being open to making those mistakes and practicing so that you can make those mistakes without setting yourself up for disappointment, if that makes sense.
Anybody else venture into tail making or have any ideas as to what you should take into consideration making your own tail?
So when taking into consideration when making your own tails and tops, you got to take into consideration ventilation, which is a huge thing that not everybody takes into consideration because you're working with chemicals and those chemicals can highly affect you. So if you're doing it inside your house, in your kitchen, or in your garage and you have no ventilation whatsoever, you could be causing yourself some issues. And it also depends on if it's fabric or silicone, because silicone tails, you definitely want that ventilation, but you also have a place to store all the molds. There's a whole lot of in-depth things that go into making a tail, making the molds, making the casting and the sculpts, because it's not an easy process because you have to have someone sit there for hours and hours and hours making this beautiful sculpt that you hope the mold takes. And when it comes to fabric tails, they're a lot easier, but you also have to think about all of these small things about the seams. And I love how tails these days, you don't have to deal with the seams as badly as you used to. You normally have the smooth finish these days, and even the fabric tails have them reinforced. But when making your own tail, I would recommend do something for yourself, make things for your people as well. But that's what the best part about tail making is talk to your customers, figure out what's going on with them, what they truly need. Because as a plus size mer, you want to be able to talk to your tail maker and say, hey, these are the couple things that don't work with my body, which is going to be different from everybody else. And when you're doing your measurements, is it from the floor to your ankle? Is it from because not everybody thinks about the floor or having their ankles all the way put together when you're measuring it. You need to have them a little bit further apart because you have to think about your knees clicking together.
The Valkyrie Mermaid talking about ventilation also made me think about just thinking about what you're putting into the environment, what's going to fall off your tails, what is going to be the product of your tails. You know, making sure that your paint is either dye fast, so it's going to stick to that fabric, and polyesters and nylons, things that we make our mermaid tails out of, synthetic fabrics don't hold dye very well. So thinking about what you put on your tail and how, especially if you're swimming in natural bodies of water, how does that come out of your tails?
I'd be careful with anything that's sequin based, honestly. Like, I love sequin for dry land or in like a small pool or anything like that. But if you're dealing with live fish or anything like that, you need to really be careful with all those smaller, large sequins. If you're going in the middle of the ocean, you're not going to be able to get every single one of those sequins that fall off your tail. Yeah, it's going to be easy for you to replace and buy a new one, but that's still out there in the ocean. And it doesn't matter what material it's made out of, it's still there. It could still cause harm unless you find something that is biodegradable. And that's the whole debate on glitter within our industry as well. Is your glitter biodegradable? Because the fish are going to eat it like fish food, and it's going to tear them up from the insides.
I would now like to ask you all how you have defined your Myrrh. How did you come about your Myrrh name and your Myrrh aesthetic?
So with my aesthetic, I started out as Mermaid Storm, and then from there I went to the Lady of the Lake. I was with a small pod, and it's just something that grew from my pen name growing up and when I used to work a lot of concerts back in the music community. And so when I came into here, Lexi Storm was my photography name as well. So Mermaid Storm adapted to that. And so the Lady of the Lake persona, which is why my tail is named Excalibur, the blue tail that I have from Myrrh Tailor. So that paired in with the Lady of the Lake, and I started doing a lot of Renaissance fairs. I had the privilege of swimming in the dive bar tank and being trained by Rachel. And I've had a lot of amazing experiences swimming with Raina, as well as Jax, doing photo shoots. Like, it's something that just grows over time. And the more I did what I really loved, like the Renaissance fairs, I paired it with my historical background with my family as well. My dad was born and raised in Germany, so I'm first generation born in America. So it's a little different here compared to Germany, but I decided to take on the roots of my family from there. And my great-grandmother lived along the Black Forest, which is one of the most beautiful and magical places in all of Germany, and if not Europe as a whole. So I kind of derived my character from there, and having large influence in my life from the Vikings and the Valkyries just showing up throughout my life. The Valkyrie Mermaid was born, if not reborn, because I've also taken a couple hiatuses within the community due to business, due to personal, due to mental health, things like that. So once I reborn myself as the truest person I wanted to be, I wanted to show that Valkyrie. I wanted to be able to help everyone, do what I can, and just really be powerful. And entering in the plus size community helped with that as well, because doing all my plus size modeling, that's what gave me the confidence. Walking down a runway, that's no easy feature, let alone as a plus size woman. You have all these eyes on you. Swimming in a pool, people are going to go, oh, it's a whale. No, it's a mermaid. you have a lot of stigmas to deal with in that time. But with the Valkyrie, it was that strength, it was that courage, it was that confidence. And with the Ren fairs, we've been joining in with the Viking encampments. So we have a full Viking encampment now with the Renaissance fairs, and to the point that they want to get me out on the battlefield. So hopefully we'll be able to get the Valkyrie Mermaid in the battlefield.
Wow.
So
I
that's
would see that. That sounds super cool.
Hi. Well, let's see. How did Lanai come to be? Well, basically, I wanted to choose something. When I started my business, I said, okay, I want to choose something that's easy for children to say and sounds exotic enough for a client to go, that's different, but I like it. So I chose Lanai. Lanai is an island I went to when I was very small, way when I was a young mermaid, mini Myrrh. And I love the name. I've always loved the sound of it. And I know it has different meanings, but it's more towards the island. And creating the persona that I have, which is basically a mermaid. Well, I was a princess back then. I'm a queen now. Mermaid queen who swims and has adventures while saving animals along her way. My tail, because I live in 80 miles off Coney Island, there's a drop-off known in through the Hudson Canyon, and that's where the kingdom is set. And I have my blue tail, which is actually counter-shaded. So in the top, it's a little bit darker. In the bottom, it's a lot lighter. So I'm literally a pelagic mermaid.
When I was trying to decide what I wanted my persona to be, it was really difficult in the beginning because I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know like how to go about this. And I wanted to do something that was more personal to me. And what a lot of people may not know, although I have shared sometimes if you've been following me since the beginning, I have a background where I was engulfed in the Maori culture for a very long time because I used to work for Air New Zealand. For those who don't know, the Maori are the natives of New Zealand. And so that was a big part of my early adulthood for many, 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 many years. And, I have now extended family there, and, it just was a big part of me personally. And so wanting to find a way to bridge that into something else that I found that I was really in tune to, which is Disney. Once Moana came out, it was kind of like light bulb. It was like ding, 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 because you have this Disney representation of a culture that I love and adore and have been a part of for many, many years now. Even though they're two different cultures, I still figured out a way that it would work and I could personalize it because, I spend a lot of time on that island every year for personal reasons with family. So it was like, okay, this is just kind of like, this is great. This is what I want to rep, especially because I wanted to have a symbol of something that people could easily identify me with. In most cases, many of you think of Mermaid Maui, and what do you think about first? The ukulele, right? So because I play the ukulele and all that stuff, it just kind of all started fitting. It just like, it fits. And so I just took it and ran with that. And if you've seen my tail, for those of you that see my tail in person, you understand the difference from when you see it just in pictures. Because in pictures, it just shines bright white, silvery. But in person, you can see how it's so colorful, and it really has that mother of pearl shine, which is modeled after, which I got the idea of modeled after that from Paua shells, which are abalone shells in New Zealand. So a lot of my jewelry, my rings and stuff, so all my that was what I wanted my tail to be, not exactly like, but the idea of it came from that. And everyone always thinks that, I wear fish hooks, and I don't think I've ever worn a fish hook. If people ever took a look at closely what's around my neck, unless you're truly familiar with the Maori culture, this is actually a manaya, which is from New Zealand. It's similar to a fish hook, but it's actually the symbol of a bird. You can see that shape. But if you look at any of my necklaces and any of my pictures, I have several different ones, but they're always a manaya, never a fish hook. But people just assume because my name is Maui that it's a fish hook. And it's not that at all. So basically that's where my persona derived from, and gathering all these different ideas of the things that I like and cultures together, and the Disney aspect of it too, which I thought would also be relatable to the young ones that I'm around, because they're like, oh, Maui, can you sing You're Welcome? Yes, why, yes I can, you know what I mean? And there it is, here we are in the ukulele, and half the time my sets are usually Disney songs anyway. So that's pretty much how that all came to be.
actually personally don't feel like I have settled into a persona beyond just myself as a mermaid who makes tales, which means I've heard people say that, that makes you less recognizable on YouTube, that makes you, less branded. And from that perspective, maybe I do want to settle into a persona, as it were. But the Mermaid Seamstress the name the Mermaid Seamstress, which I guess you could call a persona in some way, is something that came out of the fact that that's what got me into mermaiding. That's why I transitioned into mermaiding in the first place, was the fact that that is a costume that I looked at and said, I want to figure out how to sew that. I looked at it very much from an experience, and then it just evolved into so much more, bringing together my love of the water and my love of sewing and combining into the Mermaid Seamstress. So, yeah.
I too am still working on defining my exact persona. Like, I feel like I'm similarly to, I feel like a lot of people, evolving into exactly who I dreamed of being when I was 4. I was a little bitty person when The Little Mermaid came out, and have the story of being at the pool every summer, swimming with my legs together, always wishing to be a mermaid. But also, when I was 4, I said I wanted to be a combination of my idols were Janet Jackson, Whitley Gilbert from A Different World, and Miss Piggy, right? And so here I am, this fat, flirty, sexy fish that's I'm a little bougie. And it's yes, I am fulfilling my childhood dreams of being Janet Jackson, Miss Piggy, and Whitley Gilbert. Oh, and Jessica Rabbit. Why I even knew who she was when I was 4, I don't know. But and so it's pretty cool. I'm working on my backstory, which involves the transatlantic slave trade, and I feel like there's a whole novel there by the time I do the research to finally put me all together. But I've been so busy also just being that I haven't, I'm mostly just being the biggest version of me possible, while kind of working backwards sometimes to go, okay, where did I come from and how did I become? Really, I invented myself when I was 4, and now I'm 34 and I'm that person, and it's kind of cool. I'm 100% that fish, right? So my next question for you all, is there a spiritual aspect to mermaiding? I'm going to answer, and I'm going to say yes. And I feel like I'm discovering it more and more. And I've recently befriended someone who's very, very big into African mermaid mythology and stories and spiritual connections. And I'm really excited to learn more about it. But there's just something so freeing about being in the water. And there's, I think, something so freeing about becoming literally the person you kind of imagined as a little kid, right? And so I feel like I'm discovering more and more the spiritual aspect to mermaiding, but it's definitely, I believe it's there. I will also say, and there's a trigger warning about mental health and suicide here. When I was in my early 20s, and if anybody's in your early 20s and feeling suicidal, I swear to you, everybody I know was suicidal in their early 20s. I think it's just something about waking up and realizing that whoa, this world it's got a lot of it's not all mermaids and butterflies, right? So if you are there right now, it does get better. But legitimately, I know so many, like I know more people who fell suicidal in their early 20s than did not. But I was one of those people. And my kind of like suicidal ideation fantasy was like just floating out into the ocean. And my best friend, in her like weird way of being supportive, was like, that's stupid. A shark is going to eat you. You're going to drown. Drowning is like the most violent way to die. Like, this is not peaceful. And I'm like, it's totally going to be so peaceful, like in my head. And she's like, it's not going to be peaceful at all. Like, don't do that. Like, this is a bad idea. There's much more efficient ways to do this. But when I took my first freediving class and I just laid face down in the water and everything was still, I realized that was the sensation I was craving at that time. And it was such a weird, there was like a decade in between me wanting to float out to the ocean and die and me taking my first freediving class. But that realization that like, whoa, this is the sensation I was craving the whole time. What if I had started doing this 10 years earlier? It was just, I don't know, really cool. Does anybody else have any thoughts on spirituality and mermaiding? Maui's got his hand up.
Also, just piggybacking off a lot of what you said, because there's something, and I think almost everyone here can relate to that feeling of what it's like when you are in the water. For me, I grew up a water child, and I didn't know what that meant, obviously, when I was younger, but I grew up a water. If there was any type of water that I could be near, even if it was a puddle, I was in it. And as I got older and started doing more things and being able to start swimming, especially once I started mermaiding, it was a big life change for me and my own personal spirituality and meditation, because there's something about how free you become in the water. The moment I dive under, it's like serenity. It's like everything else melts away. And I truly wish I could breathe underwater, because I probably would never come back up, So it's just one of those things that I can't fully describe, but I feel like most of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I would say definitely yes.
I identify with both of you so much. And especially, Maui, what you were saying about like, if I could breathe underwater, that's the only place I'd ever be. I'd never surface, probably. And for me, the spirituality comes with the fact that I have some sensory issues, some sensory disorders, and the being able to just go underwater, and one, it blocks all of that out. Everything is muted, and it's also very internalizing. And this is something that I discovered when I started training in freediving as well, Shea. Which is that the power of water makes you ever conscious of where you are in it. As somebody who grew up swimming a lot in natural bodies of water, in the ocean, in lakes, you are so conscious of the way that water moves and the water behaves and where the current is taking you and where the tide is going and the force of the waves, everything that has to do with water, kind of and this might sound selfish, but it brings you into your own head in a way that you are focused entirely on yourself and your body, your mind, everything is focused to such a point that you're really, it's meditative in the simplest way. It's an awareness that washes over me. That's something that I've not experienced in any other way. And part of it's the adrenaline, and part of it's trying to keep that adrenaline at bay, and just the constant swirling of awareness and where your mind can go, and the erasing of everything else, but also the weightlessness, the barriers that are taken away. If I know a lot of people, and myself included, where like the chronic pain, if you have chronic pain from impact, which is something that as a large person is kind of evolved in my more recent life, in my older life, taking away that impact and therefore taking away that pain is something that really puts you in a headspace that's so much more positive than anything I could have experienced on land.
So when it comes to spirituality with mermaiding, I feel like anything can be spiritual if you allow it to be. Anything can truly affect you, affect your life, the way you see things, the way you handle things. And it's a matter of you allowing yourself to take that time too. Because when you're in the water, especially with free diving, most of us, we have to slow our heart rate down. We get into almost like a trance-like state. So a lot of people can say that trance-like state is a very spiritual experience as well. So for me, I have anxiety and depression, and I'm also legally blind without my glasses or my contacts. So I'm one of those people, being in the water, it doesn't matter if you can see or not. Nobody else can see except for the fish. And so that's the closest of truly feeling free I ever had, was getting in the water and having that freedom to swim around, not have to worry about my vision. I can worry about using echolocation or just having an understanding of my surroundings as well. And so when having that, you could say it's a handicap, but you learn how to adapt so your other senses are stronger. So you can hear a click at the bottom of the pool or something along those lines. And when it comes to the spirituality of that trance, I feel like if you have anxiety and depression, going for a swim, that was always my cure growing up. I did water polo, I did swim team, I did lifeguarding. The water was just where I always was. A lot of people will go to the ocean if they're feeling depressed or they're not feeling well. And it's something that's really good for your skin. And so for your skin, for your lungs, you're doing a lot more for yourself by swimming and having that opportunity to mermaid. And also the spiritual aspect of when it comes to like the Selkies, the mermaids, the more mythos based of it, it also depends on how deep you are into the different mytho bases. Because if you're deep into the Norse mythology, if you're deep into the Grecian, Roman, it doesn't matter. Everyone has their own version of a mermaid. And if that brings you that much closer to being that mermaid, that much closer to where you feel that's your spiritual nirvana, so to say, do it. Give yourself that freedom, because I know being curvy, I wasn't able to do a bunch of the sports growing up, but being in that water, that gives you that freedom that nobody can take away from you.
I apologize for that. We have again, tropical storm in New York. I wanted to share my actual being who I am. Many lost part of my right lung because I had a spontaneous pneumothorax, and I have really bad anxiety. And when I'm in the water, all of that goes away. Just like Maui said and everyone else said, it goes away, and I don't feel as like stressed or anything. And you should see me for a party. Before a party, I'm freaking out, trying to get my tail. The moment I'm in my tail, it's like, and everything, the Mersona takes over.
Oh, I'm going to shameless plug because I'm working on being a better saleswoman. Our awesome leggings are on sale on our website during the convention. They are 2 for $60. And if you don't know, Society of Fat Mermaids has clothes from like an extra small. Our leggings go to 5X. Our basic t-shirts go to 6X. But we are size inclusive. So it's not just a plus size shop, it is a all size shop. So if you need some fun scale leggings or leggings with cute Myrrhs on them, or a Merfolk for Black Lives shirt, or a social distancing shirt, check us out at societyoffatmermaids.com. The question I feel like I've gotten a lot of is, how do you find work as a plus size Myrrh? My answer, and I'm going to keep it quick because I want to make sure we can get to some audience questions, is for me, my goal as a Myrrh is to make it that people who are booking me are booking me. They're not looking for a mermaid, they're looking for Mermaid Chè Monique. And so for me, it's about branding myself so as that I am what you're looking for. You're not generically looking for a mermaid, you're looking for me. Everybody else, how do you find work as a plus size Myrrh? Do you find that it is more difficult to find work as a plus size Myrrh?
So when it comes to finding work as a plus size mer, there was a time where no one was really hiring any plus size mermaids whatsoever. And so it can be very, very difficult. It also depends on the group you're catering to. So if you have something more fantasy based rather than historical accurate, you'll have a lot more variety when it comes to sizing. Don't allow somebody to discriminate you. It's still discrimination regardless, just like size, skin color, sexuality, anything. If somebody says, no, you're too fat for this gig, that's not acceptable. I understand if somebody has limitations they're looking for a specific role or costuming or modeling purposes and things like that, but you shouldn't hold somebody back from being a performer and doing what they love and what you obviously love because you saw them and you were talking to them about doing a gig. It's something that it's a lot of hard work. Sometimes you have to go pitch to a lot of people. You have to really push yourself, have that portfolio ready, and just kind of give it a go. You're going to get a lot of no's before you finally get a yes. And it's sometimes about people you know, sometimes it's about happenstance. All it takes is the right person seeing you and say, I want to hire you. Or for you to finally have that moment, push past your anxiety and say, hey, here's my portfolio, I'm sending it to you. Even if you say no, at least you know about me. At least you're still going to look at my Instagram. At least you're still going to tell somebody, hey, did you see that mermaid? She's unlike somebody else I've ever seen. Or have you seen that merman? Because I know it's been hard plus size mermaid to get gigs, but I've also seen how hard it is for mermen in general to get gigs, because I can only imagine what Maui goes through with plus size merman gigs, because it's hard enough for us, it's hard enough for mermen in general to do it. And also when it comes to plus size gigs getting hired, I've had people look at me and go, well, you're blonde hair, blue eyed. Cool, you're plus size, you're not quite there. I can find any blonde hair, blue eyed somebody out there that'll match exactly what I want. And also tattoos come into play as well, because there are some people that will not hire you if you have any visible tattoos, unless you have a good story about getting captured by pirates or something. So, but yeah, finding those online, or right now we have the opportunity for a lot of the online presence. So I feel like that online presence is allowing us to have a lot more gigs than we ever had the opportunity for. But the more we bring that awareness, I feel like it's easier to get gigs. That's why Renaissance fairs are so much at home for me, because the Renaissance fairs, you're used to seeing curvy women running around, large bosoms, skirts, everything. So you're used to seeing plus size women because that meant you were healthy back then. And so Renaissance fairs have always been a lot more accepting when it came to plus size mermaiding. And that's kind of one of the avenues I decided to go down for that acceptance.
I resonated, Shea, so much when you said that when the people that are booking you out are booking you, because one of the things that I have to say about all of that too, especially for myself, is that when I first started doing this, I wasn't sure how to go about it. And I was trying to do what I thought the merman should be, what you see out there, the majestic. I'm trying to be, sensual, this goddess, sexy, whatever, and not to say that I can't do that, but that is not generally who I am. So I was trying to do like any pictures that I'd seen already out there. I'm like, okay, so this is what's working. This must be what the industry is. This is what I got to do. And that wasn't working for me because I couldn't resonate with that. And so I was like, you know what? You just need to do your own thing. You need to be you. You want to go out there and smile, go out there and smile. And the moment I started smiling, everybody's like, oh, hey, who's this guy? So my biggest advice to everyone is be you. You are enough. And once I found that within myself, it was just like, here we go. All right, Maui's off, because you guys, I am so vocal on social media. And a lot of people always ask me that, talk to me on my page and stuff like, oh, you seem like you'd be really cool to meet. And I'm like, I'm telling you, you've met me. I am not any different in person than I am here right now or on my page. Like what you see on the line is Maui in person. So I want to be someone that people feel like they can talk to. I want to feel like someone that people want to work with, someone that people want to book out and have fun with while they're working with, or see the people that he's working for having a good time at their event or whatever. And that's just started working for me because I was just like, I'm just going to be me and do my thing. And I work with two amazing companies, both Dark Tide Productions and Court of Mermaids. And they both have a set of mermaids that are so inclusive, both all ethnicities, sizes, whatever. And I couldn't be more proud to work with two such diverse companies in itself that also respect me and what I have to bring to the table as well.
So I come from a pretty different perspective because I'm not advertising myself necessarily as a performer. Where advertising myself comes in is much more as a influencer. So I do model tails for companies. I review them and things like that, as well as a tail maker. So the advantages I have as a tail maker is I have people who come to me who maybe see me and they see the plus size persona and they see somebody who can relate to them, and so they want advice on tails, or they want advice on altering tails, or having me make them a tail. And so that's kind of where being yourself comes into play, is being that representation. And then when it comes to talking to companies and saying, would you like to sponsor a tail? Could you collaborate with me on a review? You are coming at it from a different angle in that, you have to market yourself as, what can this company gain value from letting me market their products? And that would be that I'm representing a demographic of people that don't necessarily know that they can wear your tails, right? If a plus size person sees me in a mertailer or a fin fun or a fin folk, they then look at me and say, oh, I didn't realize I could fit in that tail. And so offering that to companies and saying, I offer a plus size perspective. I also offer a seamstress perspective. So if you do, want an honest opinion on the quality and materials, I have knowledge in that as well. So it is all about, playing to your strengths, playing to your own personality, and making sure that you're honest with people about who you are, who you represent, and what you want to accomplish. What are your goals?
I think that's really important perspective, because I find that a lot of times when people first enter mermaiding, kind of like you said, Maui, they just like try to follow whatever the path is, and and so to say like, hey, like I'm not, doing what everybody else is doing, but this is what I bring to the table, and whether like, and this is I was about to say vehicle, but yeah, we'll say vehicle. This is the vehicle through which I am a professional. I'm not a professional as a performer. I'm a professional as an influencer and as, a seamstress. And I think it's important to remember that there are, the ocean's big enough for all of us, but we don't all need to do the exact same thing.
So I think my first question for the panel is about facing internalized stigmatism against almost all body shapes, but especially plus size mermaids from high profile mermaid companies. What is a way that you have experienced that, and how have you dealt with that in your working experience, if you've run into that before?
I personally I keep kind of going back into the same thing. It's like if I look at your pod, your troupe, your whatever, and everybody looks like some iteration of Barbie, like I don't view that as a space for me. And so I don't find, like, I don't have a problem with that, I just am like, okay, well, I'm not going to swim with this school of fish. I'm going to go this way. And that's kind of been my personal way of going about that. And I think on some level, as we have this like really awesome and dynamic panel, as we give more of a platform. And that was kind of one of my big goals with Society of Fat Mermaids. And I guess it's like literally happening, right? Like here we are, like, 5 plus size Myrrhs, sitting on a panel at the California Mermaid Convention. You all now know we exist, that eventually, like, we can't be ignored by kind of just like excelling, so that's my personal take on that. But also it's interesting that you use the word internalized fat phobia. All the isms, fat phobia, homophobia, racism, sexism, like, in addition to dealing with it within an industry, we all have to deal with those things within ourselves. And it's really, and I'm just going to be like super open and vulnerable here. It's really almost shocking to me sometimes. Something will happen and I'll think something that's very like fat phobic and be like, whoa, like if you said that out loud and not just in your head, like because I'm like the like head of the plus size mermaid, whatever, like I might get canceled, but B, like, oh my gosh, that's like so problematic. Like, but it is internalized, and you can't, our culture, I think it's like a byproduct of capitalism, because you have to keep people like never feeling like who they are is enough, right? Like if we all just actually believed what Maui said, you are enough. Well, dag, like I don't need, to buy this wig to be enough. I don't need to lose 200 pounds to be enough. I don't need a new BMW to be enough. Like capitalism, like keeps us chasing that carrot. But because that is the world we all mostly, I believe, were born into, you literally have to break it down to yourself. And I think that's the hardest part. And it's really easy to like, the easy part is standing up and being like, hey, this is me, take it or leave it. Like, this is who I am. But the hard part is like, I don't know, wondering if I'm married now, it might be easier to get a date if I lost 50 pounds or whatever. Like that's the part, the actual internalized stuff I find is harder. I really don't care if your pod isn't, I care if your pod's not hiring people who look like me. Like we should have representation and inclusivity, and I'm constantly going to fight for that. And I want everybody to have opportunities, but like, I'll find my way. But like the breaking it down in your own head is the hardest part.
I think this question is for Maui, and thank you, Chè, for that insight. We had a question about how you deal with not only comments about body, but comments based on race and working as a mermaid, which I think Chè was talking about how the industry is already hard for mermaids, and then you make it even more of a niche performing as a merman. This is something that I know Merman Jax has talked about a lot too. Love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because, there's a reason it's called the mermaid industry, right? Because that's what is known and that is the stigma out there. And yes, there are a lot more mermen on the scene now, but look how long it took for that to start happening. And even then, it's like the initial response of let's talk kids parties for a second. The first thing that they're going to be like is, oh yeah, I want a mermaid. You will rarely hear a child say, I want a merman, right? If anything, especially if it's a little boy, it's like, I want Spider-Man. I want, Iron Man. I want something. So I think it's really important for us to keep reminding the world that it's okay. Mermen are here. We exist. There are plenty of little boys. Me, if I would have saw a merman on the scene, I would have lost my shit. You know what I mean? And so we have to remember that there is work for us out there. It just may not be as much as it is for the mermaid world. And so we just have to keep fighting to be that representation for those out there, because we all know there's so many different types of people in this world, and everyone needs to be represented in some sort of a way. And if we can keep striving for that, I think we'll make this world a freaking amazing place. So is it difficult? Yes, it can be, especially because there is not a lot of jobs for mermen. And, when you're working with other mermen, it's just like, okay, well, which one's going to go out? Or, who's the job going to be for? And it's just, we just kind of know that that's just how it is. And, but hopefully we can keep building this world and society where that it doesn't matter. Even on gigs that I have had, I've had some little kids being like, oh, but why are you a man, or why are you a boy, you know? And I've just been like, because I was born this way, or, you know, whatever the response that comes out at the time, who knows? Because when I'm in character, all bets are off of what I'm actually going to say. But it's just something that I think is where we're still working on, and we just take it as it goes.
So this is sort of related to the first question, but I think worth sort of going over. There's discrimination against plus size mermaids, both from clients or the public, but also, again, going back to in the mermaid community. And a lot of you were saying that you've had a really positive experience in the community, but I think if there have been times when you've had to deal with it sort of with mermaids, if that's something that any of you would like to speak on. Folks are asking for advice or just to hear your experiences with that.
It's never easy taking like negative critiques or anything like that from people, and learning how to mentally process it yourself is extremely difficult. If you have somebody there that's able to walk you through it and go, hey, you are worth it, you are beautiful, and having that sense of self-worth is also a huge thing when it comes to that. So if you have people walking by you going, oh, you're fat, oh, that's not a real mermaid, things like that, you also have a level of responsibility to yourself to go, am I happy here? Is that the one person that's walked by through this entire weekend that said something negative? And try and focus on, one of my favorite things is focus on your happiest memory as a as a mermaid, as a merman, as whatever, even if it's a pirate. Think of that one kid, that one adult that made it worth it to you. And that was my biggest way to overcome it was, yeah, you have a couple people that are creepy, you have a couple people that are rude, and you have people that'll knock you down off your pedestal and make you feel like you never want to do it again. But getting right back up and continuing on and doing it for yourself as well as everybody else is what's really important. And if you lose a gig from something, go find another gig. Don't let it stop you. I've lost pod mates. I've left pods because of not getting gigs because of being plus size. I've had other fat Myrrhs shame me for being plus size as well. And it's also a really weird in-between stage if you're not a super skinny mermaid, but you're also not a super fat mermaid too. You have those people go, you're not skinny, you're not fat, where do you fit in? And if you make your own place in this world, you don't need to worry about size, you don't need to worry about any of the stigmas, because people are gonna want you for who you are, for being the truest version of you.
Really related so much to what you were saying about, you know, making sure that you're true to yourself and just, again, making sure that you have that positive experience to fall back on. And for me, the few times that I have experienced negativity from within the mermaid community, it's always been an assumption about what I am or am not capable of. It's never necessarily been like overtly calling me out as a fat mermaid and insulting me for being a plus size mermaid. It's more been assumptions of, well, sweetie, like, you're too floaty for this, or you're not going to fit this aesthetic, or you're not going to be able to do this. And one of the benefits that I get from being in the water, and this is true when I was a competitive swimmer as well as now, is that water is the one place where I feel most at a level playing field with people. I have mad skills when it comes to being able to, you know, when it comes to my freediving training, when it comes to my speed, when it comes to my agility, when it comes to grace and beauty and elegance. I take those criticisms and that those kind of insults as a jumping off point to motivate myself to, yes, show off, but also to say, well, your loss, right? you're going to lose my grace, my elegance, and yes, that seems like a very selfish headspace to be in, but also that's what makes you better. That's what encourages me. That's what drives me to put myself out there more and to make sure that what I'm portraying is as positive, as polished, as professional as I can be.
A couple more really excellent questions here. So how can mermaid companies, established mermaid companies, support you as an employee? If incidents happen, how can they support you in promo materials? How can they support you in training, in costuming? What are some ways that business owners can start to support plus size merch?
Honestly, I think one of the biggest things comes down to is the representation. The more we can normalize it, the easier it's going to be. And, you know, for all of us on this panel, I'm so thankful and happy for you that we are a big representation in the community for the plus size mermaids in general. But I think that if the companies push that agenda as well and make sure the representation for plus size mermaids, mermaids of color, and all different nationalities and things like that, we just keep that narrative open and inclusive for literally everyone, I think that'll help in the long run moving forward. Now, when we get to speaking about certain incidents or things, I think it's as long as you always make sure that your team feels safe and important and of value, then that's the best thing that you can do to always have our backs.
I'm gonna add, well, on the representation front, it's weird that as people of size, we have to fight for representation because everybody loves to have that news story, America is so obese, America, so it's most people are bigger. And so we just need the world to catch up and allow themselves. And so it's weird because that goes back to what I was saying about internalized stuff, right? Most people are bigger, but still their fantasy is smaller. And it's no, we are enough. We are valid. We are awesome. But also, I think, basically, I just want to echo everything you said. The representation, number one. I've definitely had situations that people have asked me to audition for or, apply for. And I'm I don't see anybody who looks anything like me. So I don't feel like this is a safe space for me. And I understand that it becomes this chicken and egg, well, if we don't have anybody who looks like you, how do we get somebody that looks like you? And so sometimes for business owners, company owners, you have to literally say, hey, Shea, I think you'd be a great asset to my team. And I think that my team has something to actually offer you. Also, interestingly, my day job, I'm a massage therapist. And so I think I don't know, we'd have to go back, we'd have to have a conversation, Maui. It may be harder sometimes to book a male massage therapist than it is to book a merman. But there's ways to have that conversation. And this applies to kind of anything that we've decided is a stigma, right? Because it's all a construct. So if you call my job and I go and you try to schedule a massage when touching people isn't a scary thing to do, and I, for Sunday at 2:00, and I go, do you want a man or a woman? If I ask you if you like chocolate or vanilla ice cream, you're going to give me a preference, even if you don't have a strong preference, right? If I ask you if you want ice cream, you're probably not going to ask me what flavor. You're just yes, ice cream. But if you go chocolate or vanilla, you're going to say something. And the same thing, what gender do you prefer of your therapist? Suddenly people jump to have a preference. So sometimes you can rather otherwise say Maui is available or Shea is available and she's phenomenal. And you can send my portfolio or whatever, so that if somebody is really, really racist and hates fat people, they will then write you back and be oh, no, I don't want Shea, I want Rachel. And then as a business owner, you have to figure out what you want to do with that. And that's how you make sure I'm safe. But instead of treating us we're the second tier, you can just go, so-and-so is available for you. And a lot of times it's not an issue. It's that kind of apologetic, oh, I'm sorry, I only have a merman. Oh, I'm sorry, I only have the fat one. Or do you want someone who looks just like Ariel? That's it's the kind of apologetic language that can create the problem. But it is absolutely important for business owners to protect and keep whoever's working for them safe. And so if somebody just said me for president, and I keep joking that I definitely do better than Kanye. But I'm sorry. I'm gonna stop talking because you guys are making me laugh and blush. So I'll just end there.
I mean, I think we're all at Chè Monique for president right now. Like, let's do it. Good time. This is a really wonderful question, and it might sort of be our last wrap-up question. If anyone else has anything to ask, please do put it in the chat. But this is a question about fitting in as a mermaid who is unable to swim. Mermaiding, this is something we see across the board, professionally, recreationally. If you're a mermaid who's unable to swim, how do you fit in? Because so much talk is around tails and water and breath hold and free diving. And, what are some ways that someone can feel included in the mermaid community when they're unable to participate in this activity?
I think now is an awesome time, and I think the beauty of whatever it is that we're experiencing right now is that we're finding new ways to connect and interact. And that is one of the best things that's been happening in my life since March. And so here we are having this awesome, international mermaid meetup from the comfort of, home or the car or wherever you are. I don't know where you are. I'm home. This is my closet covered in a sparkly curtain. And so I think fortunately, we are lucky to live in a time when there's different ways to connect. And so finding, your pod and whatever your pod means to you, right? Like Society of Fat Mermaids, Let's Connect Facebook group. We're very welcoming. We can be your pod. Maybe it's your actual local pod, whatever that means to you. Finding your space online is one way, and then reaching out to people and articulating your needs. So if it is your local pod, somewhat local to me is Helena the Mermaid, and she has a disease called Charcot-Marie tooth. And so you may know her as the wheelchair mermaid. And I believe when she started mermaiding, she could swim, but now she can't. But she is always out with us, and when she comes up, she lives 3 hours away, but she travels so much. It's amazing. But she will tail up because she is physically able to tail up, and people who know her know how to assist her if needed. But basically put yourself out there and make friends. I have found, and I guess that's what's been challenging to me a little bit about some of the questioning, I found the mermaid community overall to be incredibly welcoming and loving and supportive, mostly. And it's hard, right? Because you have professional mermaids, and then you just have all these thousands of people who just love mermaiding and geek out about mermaids, and you say the word mermaid and our faces light up. And so for especially when you get out of the okay, there's only so many birthday parties or whatever, and you're just in the we just love this fantasy, people are so loving and supportive. It's wait, you're a grown-up that likes mermaids too? Presumably you're a grown-up that likes mermaids too. You may be a child, come hang out with me. And I think it's just saying hey, I have these needs, or I want to participate, and I can't speak to any specific disability because I would have to have the conversation with the person. But I guess as you meet people online or locally, just say I would like to do this. Can you support me in this way? Or, is it okay if I just put on my tail and hang out? And can someone help me with these transportation needs or whatever?
I personally was part of, I had an accident several years ago where I thought for a very long time I wouldn't be able to swim again. And when I started going down that path of the fact that mermaiding and swimming in general was just so important to me, and how I was, how am I going to lose that part of my life? How am I going to reconcile that? A lot of what I heard from people was being near the water. If you're not able, if it's somebody who is looking to participate in the mermaid community and they don't mind hanging out by the side of the pool or joining, craft parties or mermaiding in different ways, about the mermaid aesthetic or the mermaid lifestyle. I know that Courtney Mermaid, the Shop Vancouver Mermaid, has one of her big things is how do I use mermaiding to have mermaiding influence all that I do every day, and how does that inspire me to do the things that I need for my health, my lifestyle, my being, my well-being in general. And so I think that there's definitely a way to do that, and it might be sitting on the side of the pool or sitting on the steps in your tail and being a part of the community in that way, or it might just be being vocal. If you're passionate about the environment, make up a mersona that is maybe you do dry gigs, or maybe you participate in protests in a mermaid tail and just make that your conversation starter. Or if you don't want to wear a mermaid tail, make up that you lost your ability to be a mermaid, or figure out how to wear scales in other ways that makes you part of the community, and just reaching out and talking to people and sharing your story and sharing what you're passionate about being a mermaid. Somebody else will click with you and say, I'm passionate about that too.
So when it comes to mermaiding and not being able to swim or being afraid of swimming, I believe that's what the question was regarding. I feel that a lot of people, there's usually something connected to their fear of swimming, or it could just be they never learned at all. So giving someone that opportunity to learn how and giving them a safe environment to know how is very important. So like myself, I've taught swimming, I've done lifeguarding, I've done swim team, the work, so I have a history and a background with it. So I can professionally and have taught mermaids who were petrified of the water to only doggy paddle in the shallow end, do what they can. And then eventually, next thing you know, they're diving down to the deep end because they all of a sudden have this confidence and they can do it. They swim flawlessly. So occasionally it's giving them the opportunity and a safe environment to do it, as well as, so if you can't swim and it's a no-brainer, or you have tubes in your ears and you can't do it, also you can do dry land events. And that's what a lot of us do, is if you can't afford a tank or can't do a pool and transport that or anything like that, we do our dry land gigs. And so you work on your modeling, you work on your posing, you work on your customer service and your interaction with the children and the adults and the on-land aesthetic, because you can do certain things on land that you can't do under the water. There's certain wigs you can wear, there's certain makeup you can do, certain talking things that you can do. And sometimes people can't wear tails. Sometimes they physically are not able to get into a tail. So what do we have? We have walking tails. We have other options. You don't have to have the tail to be a mermaid. If you're a mermaid, it's because you are a mermaid and you believe and the magic is real. It's not because you have a tail. It's not because you spent the last 2 hours trying to struggle into a silicone tail that wasn't the right size or anything like that. You instead are like, all right, I'm a mermaid. I have the confidence. I don't care what you say. Let's do this. Let's go out to this event. Let's hang out with all these people and let's have fun. Let's make this a memory. It doesn't matter if you can swim. It doesn't matter if you can't walk, all of that. One of my favorite things is I literally can't walk when I get out of tail, especially if I'm in it for too long. And I will sit there and I feel, okay, imagine I was just sitting in tail for 6 to 8 hours. Imagine what somebody has to go through every day for that feeling. And also when it comes to safety for plus size MERS, I think it's really important to have a lifeguard around, especially one that knows how to help plus size mermaids in a pool. Because if you have a standard lifeguard who has only ever helped someone that is skinny, and they can't get a plus size mermaid over the ledge, let alone out of the water to breathe, then you're not going to be able to ever protect your investment or your employees or anything if you cannot guarantee their safety. So that would be my double on that.
And you made such a great point about safety and lifeguards that I just want to follow that up and agree with you that, maybe you want to set yourself up for success. So that embarrassing scenario of a lifeguard struggling, as well as being life-threatening potentially, that embarrassing scenario of, oh, they weren't able to get her out of the water because she was larger. Maybe that means that until you know for certain how to approach that, maybe you say, 2 lifeguards, or maybe you say that you will, only, for whatever, you will only do this style of gig, and having that safety aspect, but also not shaming somebody for wanting that safety aspect, whether that be, I don't know how to swim, can you teach me shame-free? And I know how to swim, but I need to make sure that I have the backup that I need. And being concerned about that safety, shame-free, is also very important.
Thank you all so much. I think we've got like 2 minutes before we absolutely have to get off. So I just want to thank everybody for joining me on this panel. This has been so cool. Thank you, Rachel, and the California Mermaid Convention for having us. This is a literal dream come true. I hope that everybody here has seen that there's so many different approaches and ways that one can be a mer in general, which I guess we know because there's a whole convention of us, or multiple whole conventions of us, but also different ways to approach being a fat or plus size mer. So I just want to thank everybody who has sat on the panel, asked questions, participated, hung out. This has been so cool. Again, please fill out that size survey that I posted in the chat. I'm going to try to post it again real quick. It is a Google questionnaire. Somebody was concerned that it was a PDF, but it's a Google quiz. What else do I have to say? You guys are awesome. Everybody is beautiful. Join us if you want to talk about more fat mer things in Society of Fat Mermaids. Let's connect. Oh, everybody should drop their handles. So my everything is at Mermaid Chè Monique. I'm gonna give you guys bubble kisses and stop talking. Justine, where can people find you?
People can find me on YouTube, Instagram, at the Mermaid Seamstress, and on Twitter at Mermaid Seams, and also on Facebook at the Mermaid Seamstress.
Everyone can find me on Instagram at merman_Maui and or Facebook. Search Merman Maui, or I think if you need the at search, I think it's just at Merman Maui, no underscore on that one.
Find me on Instagram and Facebook at the Valkyrie Mermaid. And then I'm currently working on building my YouTube page.
Hi. Oh my God. Okay, you guys can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube as New York Mermaid, just all one word. I'm also working on a series on life lessons from a professional mermaid. So if you guys have any questions, just drop into any page and be like, hey, I have this question about being a mermaid or professional merman, or whatever it is you have. No question is dumb. So please feel free to contact me anytime. You guys are more than welcome to.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Yes. Round of applause. Everybody have an awesome weekend. Enjoy all the panels. And you know how to find us. Bye.